Welcome, I'm so happy you're here. I titled the CEU, The Art of Difficult Conversations, because just like in design, handling difficult conversations is the right combination of art and science. And the more masterful you are at your craft, the better your results. Difficult conversations are the same. The more skilled you are at the art of this balance, the smoother your experience, the more energy you will have, and the better clients and projects you will get. We're all faced with conflicts until the end of time, so why not spend some time mastering difficult conversations? This CEU is packed with great wisdom as a result of hundreds of hours of coaching interior designers, as well as my own journey of 25 years in corporate America. I've pulled together proven tools from multiple areas of my training, and with practice, they will make you really good at difficult conversations. We will go on a journey together that highlights the common mistakes we make inadvertently that makes the situation worse. I do that because if you can simply reduce your mistakes, you can transform your situation. I offer 3 solutions to handle stressful situations, and I show you exactly how you can do it. It's packed with specific examples of verbiage to use that diffuse conflict and opens a new kind of conversation. What I love about these techniques is that you can use them for any situation, business or personal, and with anyone, spouse, parent, friends, and you can introduce them at any point in a difficult conversation. You simply start using these tools to get you back to a respectful conversation. This video is a recording from presenting at both the ASID Los Angeles and San Jose chapters. It's part teaching, part Q&A, part audience exercises that you can do at home along with us. When I was presenting in San Jose, we had a series of funny events happen, like the lights went out. So at the very end, we decided to share some of our funny outtakes, like embarrassing moments of a speaker. So make sure you go all the way to the end. And remember, you can watch the CEU anytime. You can stop and start it just by going to the web page, put your cursor on the CEU button, click on Watch the Art of Conversations. Also remember, in order to get your CEU credit, make sure you take the quiz after you watch. And that's easy too. You find the CEU menu button, place your cursor there, click on the Art of Conversations quiz. Finally, grab a glass of water, a pen, and some paper, because I feel sure you're going to want to take some notes and keep hydrated. I'm so happy you're here. Make yourself comfortable, and I'll see you on the other side. So as interior designers, you are thrust into these emotional, high-stakes situations and conversations with virtually little or no formal training. And yet, millions of dollars will be gained or lost based on how well you handle those situations. What's interesting about your business that's so unusual is that you have 3 sort of major, what I would say, constituencies or relationships in these partnerships that you have. One would be business partners, like an architect might come and ask you to work together, another interior designer, right? So these are business partners that you might have a partnership with. And that partnership has a whole host, right, of challenging situations, potentially difficult conversations that have to do with that partnership, right? Then you have a second tier. You have industry partners. You have the people that you are purchasing from. And those relationships also have a whole host of challenging and potentially difficult situations. And if that wasn't enough, right, you have a third, and perhaps notably one of the most important, is your client. And you have a whole myriad of potential difficult situations, all the way from they're unhappy, and you've got to figure all that out. There's a misunderstanding. There's a mistake. And perhaps you're one of those people that have a little difficulty talking about your pricing. That can be a really challenging conversation. Contracts can be a really challenging conversation. So you have these 3 tiers, I would say groups of relationships, right? I mean, doesn't it just sound like it would almost be impossible for you to not have any kind of conflict? I mean, it's just a fertile ground for the possibility to have conflict. So you absolutely know that at some point in time, you're going to have conflict, difficult conversation, difficult situation. So I want you, everyone stand up if you have already had in your lifetime. This is just to get you to stand up. If you know what I'm talking about, if you've had a difficult conversation, you know what I'm talking about, stand up. Never? Okay, so come up and teach the class. No, really. Okay, so look around. Everyone has conflict, right? Everyone's experienced it. You're all familiar with it, right? Okay, so now, those of you who have had any kind of training in conflict resolution, difficult conversations, any CEUs, any classes, any certification, all of you who've had that training, remain standing, and those of you who haven't, sit down. Difficult conversations, conflict resolution. So I don't know how many people are here, but you've got 6, 7 people out of everyone, okay? Congratulations to you all, and you can sit down. And really my point of showing you this is it's amazing that we all know that we're going to have these challenging conversations. We all know how difficult they are. We know how much time they take, right? It's part of our business. And people expect us to be able to handle all those, the myriad of situations that I just described. They expect you to be a leader and to be able to handle that. And so yet only a very small percent. And by the way, a very small percent of you who have had really formal training on how to handle it. And by the way, you're not alone because it's the same all across the country. There's only a few who've actually had formal training. And so look at, this is going to be a challenging exercise too. Look at your entire career, and I see some of you might be seasoned interior designers. Some of you aren't, but some of you might be seasoned interior. Look at your entire career and try to pull forth all of the situations, all of the challenging conversations, all of the stressful situations when you knew you had to have a difficult conversation. Like, bring those to mind. I know. This is going to motivate you. This is the only reason why I'm doing this. It's going to motivate you. So bring those to mind. Think about one thing. Only the time that it took for you to actually have that conversation, or to send that email, or to have that phone call. Look at that time. Now multiply that across your entire career, right? Look at that time. Then add in all the time that you took beforehand. Oh my gosh, and afterwards. Beforehand though, you know, beforehand is a big deal. What am I going to say? How am I going to say it? How should I say it? Should it be phone, email, live? How should I handle this? Talking to your husband, talking to your children, talking to your neighbors. Look at all of that time. An immense, enormous amount of time. So back to the first part I said in my conversation, when I started out saying, you can gain or lose millions of dollars in the course of your career if you know how to if you know how to do this with ease. And you can do this with ease. You will blow past this. It won't take you that much time. You won't have that much stress. It will be simple for you. And what do you do when you're not stressing about having a difficult conversation or stressing about the situation that you're about ready to have to deal with? You get to design more. You get to take on more clients. You get to take on some great projects. This is probably a great example. I coach a client. She lives in a market. I think it's either one or two of the most billionaires that live in that market, okay? She's got a multi-millionaire client, and she's got a billionaire client, okay? We were talking on the phone yesterday, just coaching, it's that fresh. She's telling me she's been doing this project for the multi-millionaire client A, let's say A, okay? All they wanted to do was come to her and get some of her advice. She gave some of her advice. I think it was less than $5,000 that she spent on this client, okay? Less than $5,000. Still, what is this, July? Still since April, they haven't paid her. They called her 6 times today because they hired a contractor that left some problems in their home. Now, mind you, she's not on this project anymore, right? They want her to fix it, right? And probably not charge for it, and they haven't paid her for it. Then on the other spectrum, on the other scale, she has this billionaire client who she was doing a walkthrough, final walkthrough with this client, and they can't say enough. They want to spend more money. They spend $500,000. They want to spend more. They're walking through the home, and they want her to do more. All of this in a matter of 1 week, right? She had to engage her lawyer on one of the conversations, right? Super stressful. And then on the other side, this is your life, right? And you have to sort of balance and manage all of this. I had a client once, and she had a situation where she had a client, high-end residential client she'd had for over a decade, and they went from a client to a friend. They went from a client to a friend. And then, so she's working on this project. She didn't ask for money up front. She didn't change her contract. The client started getting really, really unhappy, all these custom-made things, and then they got a divorce, and her husband's a lawyer. So she put off all these really difficult conversations because she didn't have this boundary between personal and business, and she was out like $10,000. So this is what I mean when I say it can save you. You can gain or lose millions of dollars over the course of your career. And where you gain is, I have another situation, a gentleman that lives in Chicago, and he works for a really high-end firm. And they have clients all over the country, all over the world, actually. And when the economy had a downturn, 23 of his comrades got laid off. And 7 of them, including him, did not. Why is that? Well, there's a lot of reasons why that is, but one of them is that he was so good at difficult situations. He could just smoothly move through them with clients, with vendors, with partners. One time he was managing over 65 people on one project. Kept him because he was so good at that. So that's what I mean when you can either gain or lose millions of dollars over your career. Your skill has a direct impact on the income that you make. That's why we're here, is to help teach you how to do these conversations, have these conversations so that they become easy. And guess what happens when you can do these conversations with ease? You don't get those really bad clients. You attract the kind of clients that like to be with somebody that can ease through things. And I know you know what I'm talking about, right? So that's why we're here, and that's what we're going to talk about. is what I believe in terms of teaching this system, I guess that I would say I have, that helps you really do this easily. If you can focus on the first part of your conversation, if you can focus on the early part of trouble, the early part when you feel like your client, something's coming, something's, anticipating, or even when you feel that little, that little feeling in your gut when they're not quite happy, this is what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on that beginning part and how you can turn that part around. This isn't like a class on conflict resolution. I would have to have you in here for days, right, to teach you how to, from when it goes all the way down into some kind of, you have to have some kind of mediation or resolution. So I'm going to teach you how you focus on the early part, because when you focus on that early part, 90% of the other won't happen. And I just think that's a really good use of time. So there's 3 mistakes, I think, that we all make. And if we can reduce those 3 mistakes, that will be a really great start. The first mistake is that when you see or feel that something is amiss, you don't acknowledge it. So the first mistake is that you pretend like it's not there. You think it's going to go away. When you step over that, the nonverbal message that gets sent is, I'm not interested. I'm not going to deal with this. I don't want to hear you. That's not the message you want to send. Technically, the message that you want to send is, I'm not really sure how to deal with this. I'm not really sure I feel comfortable opening up this can of worms. Really, that's the message you want to say. But that's not what gets heard. When you don't acknowledge that something is amiss, what happens to your clients? Someone tell me, what happens? They get angry. What?
They said it builds, the anger, resentment builds.
The resentment builds. What else? What else happens?
Lack of trust.
Lack of trust. Yeah. It's like they build this pile, right? They have this pile and they just have it ready, and they go, ooh, that's the first one, boom. That's the first resentment. That's the first, feeling, not trusting you, because they've given you their dreams and their money. Their 2 most intimate things. Now, the second mistake that we make is that what happens is we get sort of closed in, right? When somebody, let's say we allow somebody starts telling us they're unhappy with us, they didn't quite like it, they look at a concept and they think, okay, it's not quite right, right? And some people do this. They're offended, or they feel defensive, that somehow it's personal, that they didn't like something, or they're unhappy. They get a little bit withdrawn. So when you become defensive and when you become closed, guess what happens again? More resentments. And it's even a bigger issue. For people, what happens is they don't feel as safe to tell you their dreams and give you their money. These are points where people make choices of how much more business they're actually going to do with you. Okay, they start pulling back. So that's the second mistake. The third mistake is that we try to do what I call rapid solution fire, instead of focusing on building trust. How many of you are in those situations where your client, a vendor, a partner, they're upset with you and you just want to do one solution and then another solution? You want to fix it, right? It's just a natural thing that you want to fix their issues. What happens is
they are telling you only the things that they're upset about, that they feel safe to tell you in that moment. Okay? That's the only thing they're telling you. They actually haven't gotten to the really good nugget yet. What's important at this point is not to solve it, but what's important at this point is to regain their trust. So what happens is the mistake is we try to solve, when in reality the topic is, listen, you have to regain, you got to back up and regain my trust first, and then we can start solving these problems. So you notice that you try to solve it and they're still not happy. Like you keep kind of trying and it's not, and have you ever wondered like, what's going on? I've solved almost everything here.
I'm giving you a mini crash course on boundaries because my discovery over the years is that the lack of practicing good boundaries is the reason we get stuck in difficult conversations. I believe that when we know better, we do better. Let's start by defining boundaries. Boundaries are energetic guidelines and parameters we draw around ourselves to create reasonable, safe, and permissible ways for other people to behave around us. These parameters are made up of beliefs, opinions, attitudes, experiences, and social understandings we hold close to our hearts. Boundaries allow us to confidently express who we are and what we want in life. They get expressed through both verbal and nonverbal communication. Here's an example. Let's say you're at a social event and a person realizes that you're an interior designer and begins to ask your professional advice. You share a couple of ideas, but it goes on and on. You begin to fidget with your glass, you move your eye contact, your tone of voice, and your mood changes as you think about what you're going to do next. These are all nonverbal cues you are sending to that person about your personal boundaries that they've been violated, but it's before you've decided what boundary you want to set. People feel this, but then they're confused when we don't follow it up with verbal communication. So here's just one thing you can do to set stronger boundary and change the conversation. If you'd like to talk further about your project, I'd be happy to schedule an appointment in your home and share my advice. They'll either brush you off because they wanted free advice anyway, or they'll get excited to get their project moving. They might say, that would be great. What's your consulting fee? And you know how to take it from here. They also might say, oh, I'm sorry, I was taking too much of your time. For which you can respond graciously and say, no problem, I'm just here to relax and enjoy the party. This sets another boundary. I'm not here to work. Each of these responses send a message about who you are, how you spend your time, how you want them to respect your time, and how you work, all in a matter of seconds. It's very powerful. I see there are 4 major kinds of boundaries. Weak, meaning you have virtually no boundaries, or you start out practicing boundaries, but with the slightest pushback, you cave in. Soft boundaries are when you begin setting a boundaries like saying, this is what I charge, or I have a contract, or I don't return custom things. But in the situation, you don't hold to your word. When you discount your own boundary, it sends a message to others, I have boundaries, but they don't matter. Please behave however you want. The third boundary is flexible. Flexible boundaries are healthy because first you hold to your parameters, but you are flexible and open in situations that might require some softening or strengthening while still holding true to your core values. This might look like, let's take a look and brainstorm and see what we can come up with. It's not very often that a vendor will return a custom piece. This sends a message you're holding to your boundaries and you will work to solve their problem. It also sends a message you respect your boundaries and expect them to also. Finally, there are rigid boundaries. You see these in people who hold boundaries so tight that it's like being with a security guard who's protecting something. All boundaries are good, and you get to choose which type of boundary is appropriate to use in a situation so that you consistently express who you are while holding true to your own personal parameters. What I have found is that the people experiencing the most trouble in handling difficult situations exercise either weak or soft boundaries, and in many cases, no boundaries at all. Let's take one situation and share the types of responses that go with weak, soft, and flexible boundaries so that you can gain a greater clarity. Your client might say, "I hate it and I want you to remove it immediately." So from a place of weak boundaries, you might respond in fear of upsetting the client further. So you do it, you eat the cost without exploring any alternative solution, and you leave with deep resentments. A response using a soft boundary might look like this. "I hear you're really upset. Don't worry, we'll make it right. First, let's take a look at..." Then, after some pushing from the client, you do what they want. Flexible boundaries look like this. "Let's talk about what you hate and you like. I'm a highly creative person faced with this situation all the time, so we will find the best solution." So you're holding a boundary, but you're also ensuring the client gets their needs met. To strengthen your boundary in this situation, you might even explain how hard it is for people to have new things in their space, and suggest that they live with it for a couple of days and revisit what they like and don't like. You can mention too that you find that by living with it, it gives far better insights for a new solution to appear than in an emotional moment. Take a look at this image. It explains it all. It's a perfect visual reminder that when we negotiate which problems or concerns we're going to pick up, we have non-existent boundaries. I see this issue a lot. There's this misunderstanding that taking on other people's problems or worries is a necessary part of doing business. It's not. There's a huge difference between helping people solve their problems and literally taking them on as your own. Here is another great image to understand what we look like when we do it. It also gives an indication of what we might feel like too. If you're feeling overwhelmed in work, with clients, in your life, it's a sure sign that you're picking up other people's problems. If you experience locking up or forgetting what you're working on, even physical illness is a sign of practicing too weak boundaries. It physically weighs you down and there's only so much you can carry. There will be a breaking point. Here are some great guidelines to identify if you're practicing weak or soft boundaries. Number 1, saying yes when you want to say no. Number 2, feeling guilty when you do say no. Number 3, staying silent when you have something to say. Number 4, acting against your values in order to please. Number 5, giving too much just to be perceived as being useful. the result of all these decisions is self-denial. Self-denial chips away at your self-respect and respect for others. What is at the root issue of weak boundaries? It's fear. Fear defined as distress, anxiety, dread, panic, alarm. What is this fear about? We won't be loved. Rejection. We aren't good enough. We aren't deserving enough. And the thought, I won't get their business unless I allow this. Because of that fear, you let go of your integrity just to salvage crumbs of love and acceptance from clients. When you do that, any respect they had for you and good treatment is out the window. People learn how to treat you based on the boundaries you set and how you treat yourself. Practicing healthy, flexible boundaries that uphold and communicate your values teaches others to behave within that set of parameters. It serves as a guideline to generate confidence, mutual respect, and rich conversations. And finally, people hire people who have similar boundaries. So when you practice good boundaries, you get clients who respect them as well. So I want to talk a little bit about what the difference is between a really difficult conversation and a regular conversation, just so you sort of understand what's happening, okay? So this is what's happening. In a regular conversation, you and I are just having, everything is going smoothly. The first thing is that our opinions are similar. We have similar opinions so much so that you're nodding your head and I'm not nodding your head. We're kind of going along happily, right? Well, that is an easy kind of conversation. We're going along happy. Maybe our opinions, they could be a little bit different, but they're close enough that we're going along happy. I feel safe, you feel safe, I trust you, you trust me. We're building this, what they call this pool of shared meaning. We have enough in common about how we think and what we're trying to communicate that we create this pool of shared meaning. So we've established the safety, our ideas, and then you notice, do you ever notice when you're in a really easy conversation, think about your clients when you're in a really easy conversation and your ideas just flow. Do you ever notice your creativity just flows? Things comes easy to you, and it's like you're at your best. You know, your thinking is really strong and heightened, and everything is just coming out of you. That's an easy conversation. And then what happens is that somewhere in point in time, if you've ever noticed a conversation, we've all been in those. If you've been in those conversations and everything's all hunky-dory and you're going along and you're having this great conversation and something happened, it just starts changing and shifting and starts going downhill and you're thinking to yourself, wow, something just changed and you're not sure what it is. Well, the first thing that happens is the opinions of the two people. Let's just take two people for the sake of argument. The opinions somehow started going too far apart. People are not relating with you. And you might feel this sometimes as an interior designer or an architect when you start talking design speak. That could be one. And your clients, glaze over look, or you start talking about a future state that they can't connect to, right? And they're like, oh, I don't know what she's talking about. I'm not sure we're on the same page. So then what happens? Doubt, right? Doubt seeps in. It seeps in, it goes everywhere, and it takes over. It takes over in places that aren't even necessary. And I know you know what I'm talking about. You have clients and then suddenly they doubt everything that you're doing. And you already have high stakes, because if you're dealing with someone's emotion in terms of residential, or career or politics in terms of commercial, you are dealing with high stakes.
and then you put money on top of that. People are ultra sensitive about their dreams, about their career. And so emotions are high, stakes are high, relationships aren't trusting, they're not safe. What happens? What happens to everyone? Everyone shuts down. Everyone closes down. You and them. It's a natural phenomenon. It's just something that happens. It's something to be aware of. And that's why I'm sharing with you. It's really important to be aware of what happens. It's a natural thing when you start becoming unsafe, or you feel like some intimate feelings are being jeopardized in some way, and people start closing down. And then, how do people respond? You have two ways, you know, fight or flight, right? This is kind of the basic fight or flight. So what are some examples if someone is, if they're responding to you in sort of a fighting kind of way? What might be something that someone responds to you? Yeah.
I'm not going to pay the bill.
Yeah, they start, I'm not going to pay. They start sending you nasty emails. They start, so a fighting kind of response is a forward action. So it might be nasty emails, phone calls, those are more of a fighting kind of response. A flight is they're not paying attention to you. They're not responding to you. They're not answering your questions. It's the same issue, but it is a different response because some people are much more action-oriented and fight-oriented, and some people are much more reactive, and they want to do things, withdraw. I want to show you physically what happens in your brain. The moment that you feel that, or you're in a conversation and you're like, this is not going anywhere, or this is not the way I want it to be going, or somebody leaves you a phone message or an email, it doesn't matter. But when you have that instant where you go, uh-oh, something's off, that moment, it's a physical response that tells your body all the blood in your head begins to drain and goes back from your cortex, which is your higher thinking, to what we call the reptilian brain. And the reptilian brain's function is only it's for survival. It's for safety. So you don't have higher thinking. So when you're standing there with your client and you've said, uh-oh, and suddenly it tells your body, all this blood drains out of the front of your head where all this great thinking is happening, and it goes way back here. And have you ever found yourself in those situations where you just can't respond in like a normal, personal way, right? You come up with like, that you're thinking to myself, you think to yourself, I've solved worse problems. This isn't like, right? And nothing comes out of your mouth and you think, I'm stuck. You just feel like you're stuck. That's what's happening. That is literally what's happening. So in that moment, if you can consider yourself not going, that's a little instigator that says to your body, pull back, go back here, we're in trouble. Okay? So that moment, that is a really key moment that if you can think about it, is to say, oh, you know what? I've solved worse problems than this. I'm going to stay in my frontal lobe. And this is what most people do. They go, oh, I hear there's something wrong. I can tell there's something amiss. They're not telling me. I don't know what to do. I can see it. And you're stuck. And then you pass on. You move on to the next thing because you don't know what to do. So you can do, here's what you do, is you acknowledge it. And you can do that in a million different ways. One is simply, like you said, is just to stop and say, hey, look at your client in your eyes and go, you know, I can tell something's off. I know you. And you have to find where your relationship is with your client. This is where it gets really personal. And what I'm talking about is kind of uses my personality. And my coaching clients and my clients I'm really close to. And even though I'm on the phone with them, and you're on the phone with your clients a lot, I'll say, hey, I can tell there's something up. Before we go on to that topic, just start talking. Just start telling me what's going on. Right? Just say, it doesn't matter if it's about design or not, because here's the key. If they are preoccupied with something in their head, they are not going to give you 100%, right? And everything's going to be filtered through this preoccupation. So they're angry at their husband, they're angry at the world, they're angry at their job, they're upset about whatever, kids, shopping, work, anything. It doesn't matter what it is, but it is a detriment for you two to work together. And it will take you seconds. It will literally take you seconds to let them say, blah, 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 blah. And if it's you, here are some little things that you can say. I sense we're off somehow. Let's say it's about you. You don't even know it's about you, but maybe say you're looking at concepts. You're showing them concepts, right? And they're like, yeah, that's nice. I like that. Not. Right. You know that.
The nonverbal has more strength, and that's what people hear is the nonverbal, which is this and the tone, the body language and the tone. So you know something's not right, even though the words were there. And anytime you're dealing with any human being, the nonverbal communication always trumps verbal. So whatever a client says, and you already know this intuitively because you're so intuitive, whatever the client says, whatever you say, it's always the intention in the tone and the body language that's the true communication.
So, it depends on how well you know him, but you can say, wow, we took this partnership because I wanted you to be like thrilled, ecstatic. So I don't really want to go much further until we get to the thrilled, ecstatic. So tell me about, this is a key, open-ended questions. Tell me about your response, your reaction, what you like, what you don't like. Say more. Your reaction, here's something you can say. Do you know how sometimes people have these reactions like they didn't get their draperies on time and literally the world is going to come to an end? The end of the world. And it might not even be their draperies, it could be a tablecloth, right? Or a rug, or whatever, right? The end of the world. Here's one that I think works really good. Wow, your reaction, your response seems like a lot bigger than, we can solve this. It seems a lot bigger. Can you tell me more about what's going on? Is there something else behind this that we could talk about that might be creating this despair that you're experiencing?
There's some little thing wrong with a drapery, or something little with a sofa, or something with a kitchen tile, and there's just this explosion, like it's life or death, right? And they're really upset. Wow, your response, your reaction seems so much bigger than the situation. This is fixable. What's on your mind? What else is going on? This will diffuse and help eliminate them dumping on you, creating more issues than what's up. Because what are you going to do? You're going to solve it. You want to make them happy. You're people pleasers. They're your client, right? This will help you from having to take on all of their stuff. You with me? So your reaction seems bigger than our situation here. It's completely solvable. Do you want to tell me about it? What that does, and I want to teach you how to not have a 30-minute conversation about them telling you about it, right? Because that could be what happens. But what this does is it allows them to get something off of their mind, which is already distracting anyway, okay? It's already distracting, and you're not able to move forward on the project and on the discussion. You don't have their full attention because they're so busy thinking about something else. So it enables them to release all this energy, all this anxiety. And once you get that out, guess what? The relationship between you and them creates a stronger bond. They trust you more, they like you more, you've made it easy for them to do business with you.
You're actually acknowledging what you're seeing. You're not saying it in a, wow, you look really pissed off. I mean, you should see your face. Yeah, right? I'm not saying it like that, but I can say that in a different way with a different tone. Wow, you look like you're really suffering. Your face, you look really upset. Let's talk about, your response seems far bigger than what this is about. Let's talk about that. Tell me more about what's going on. Yes. You ask yourself, how is my connection with this client in this moment? How are we in this moment? Are they distracted? You don't even have to make the question about you, right? You just say, wow, you seem really distracted in this moment. In other words, you simply define your experience in the moment. Don't put judgment onto it, whether it's something you have done or you haven't done. And if it's about, people appreciate, let me just say this, people so appreciate simply being acknowledged. Like if I was really melancholy or I was kind of sad, people appreciate going, wow, you seem a little sad today. Everything okay? And if you're wrong, most people are not going to get mad. Most people are not going to go, they're going to say, well, I appreciate you saying something, but I think I'm okay. Like if you're wrong, they'll
Check their face.
They'll check their face. I love that.
No, I must be projecting something that I'm...
Yeah, especially here in LA. My gosh, they're so conscious about these things. So that's a really good question, and you just kind of have to rely. I have this little quote that says, follow your intuition because it knows. It knows everything. So just follow that and sort of be clear and think about how you might say that. Yeah.
Your tone of voice and how you say it.
Yeah, she said it's your tone of voice and how you say it. And here's a little nugget. I think I talk about this later, but it's a good time to talk about it now, is 90% of all communication is nonverbal. 90% is nonverbal. And what makes up 90%? 60% is body language, right? 60%, it says I don't have to say anything, and you could call out what emotion I'm feeling and what I'm emoting in seconds, right? 30% of that 90 is tone. You've all heard this, right? I love you too. This is the best example. We all know, right? Yeah, I love you too. Right? Oh, I love you. I love you too. Means completely different things. In fact, so completely on the far ends of the scale, right? Yeah, so tone is everything. Tone and body language. The last thing I want to really say about this step one, about acknowledging, so we talked about check your gut, what's your intuition tell you, use open-ended questions. I said a couple of things. Wow, when you look at this fabric, I can see you're not as ecstatic as we talked about before. Am I on track? Are we on track? We've worked together long enough. I know something is off. Please tell me. I hear you're really upset. Let me understand you better. It doesn't have to be about you. The thing about acknowledging, it has so much power. It doesn't have to be about you. If you just simply acknowledge where somebody is at, it allows them to open up and then move on with what you're working on. That's the power of acknowledgement.